You put your one more patient in law or no law, I'll find you, I'll put a bullet in the back of your head, and I'll drop your body in the East River. And I'll go home and I'll sleep sweetly.
Welcome to today's show. My name is John. As always, you can subscribe to the show at Apple Podcast or wherever you get your podcast. You can follow the links to social media in the podcast show notes. You can also go to classicmovierev.com to read notes, bios, and other random movie thoughts. Today's movie is Detective Story 1951. Let's get right to the hardest issue. IMDb.com tags this movie as a film noir, while Rotten Tomatoes does not. I generally go with the more liberal classification of IMDb. This movie is certainly not a classic film noir. There's no strong femme fatale, and the lighting is rather bright. Let's just say it's a stage play with noirish elements, or as the cool kids say, noir stained. The film is rated 7.6 in IMDb.com. On Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 70% on the tomato meter and a 72% audience approval. The film was based on a successful Broadway play written by Sidney Kingsley. It was ably directed by William Wyler. This film received 4 Oscar nominations: Best Director for Wyler, Best Actress for Parker, Best Supporting Actress for Grant, and Best Writer for Philip Yordan and Robert Wyler. On November 7, 1951, New York Times film critics Bosley Carruthers said, quote, "Sidney Kingsley's play, Detective Story, has been made into a brisk, absorbing film by producer-director William Wyler, with the help of a fine, responsive cast. Long on graphic demonstrations of the sort of raffish traffic that flows through a squad room of plainclothes detectives in a New York police station house, and considerably short on penetration into the lives of anyone on display. In the performance of this business, every member of the cast rated a hand, with the possible exception of Eleanor Parker as the hero's wife, and she was really not to blame. Kirk Douglas is so forceful and aggressive as the detective with a kink in his brain that the sweet and conventional distraction of Miss Parker as his wife appears quite tame. In the role of the maid of such a tiger, and of a woman who has had the troubled past that is harshly revealed in the picture, Mr. Wyler might have cast a sharper dame." Unquote. I have to agree with him. I thought she was the weakest part of the movie, even though she was nominated for an Oscar. Many other critics commented on how well Wyler let the action flow, making it seem more like a film and less like a play. Actors.
Right, and I'm a Shakespearean actor.
Kirk Douglas played Detective James McLeod, who we shall say was driven. The great actor Douglas was first covered in Episode 4 in Harm's Way, 1965. Gladys George was cast as Miss Hatch. George was covered in Episode 100, The Maltese Falcon, 1941, where she played the role of Archer's wife. Frank Phelan played Detective Gallagher. He was first covered as a cab driver in Episode 38, 99 River Street, 1953, but he was Ernie the cab driver in It's a Wonderful Life, 1946. Burt Freed played Detective Dacus. Freed was covered in Episode 73, Billy Jack, 1971, where he played a bad dad, and he also played the same role in Wild in the Streets, 1968. Pat Flaherty had a small uncredited role as the desk sergeant. Flaherty was covered in Episode 40, Key Largo, 1948. Lee Grant played the shoplifter. She was really the passive watcher of all the action. This was Grant's first movie, and oh man was she young. I didn't recognize her until halfway through the film. Grant was first covered in Maroon, 1969. Eleanor Parker played Mary McLeod, the lady with a secret past. She was born in Ohio in 1922. She began studying acting at 15 and was offered a screen test early on. However, she turned this opportunity down to gain experience on the stage. After high school, she began studying at the Pasadena Playhouse. While sitting in the audience of a play, the young redhead was spotted and offered another screen test, which she again declined. After spending a year at the Pasadena Playhouse, she approached and was given a screen test by Warner Brothers. Her first film was Buses Roar, 1942. She received an important role in the pro-Soviet Mission to Moscow, 1943, with Walter Houston. The Soviets were our allies in World War II, but that didn't seem to matter in the communist hunt-crazed days of Senator Joe McCarthy and the Un-American House Un-American Activities Committee HUAC of the next decade. Parker was on track making a lot of films, including a few good film noirs. These films include Crime by Night 1944, Pride of the Marines 1945, a remake of Human Bondage 1946, the film noir Cage 1950, where she had to shave her hair for the prison scene and received an Oscar nomination, Detective Story 1951, where she was also Oscar nominated, I Don't See It, Scaramouche 1952, Valley of the Kings 1954, where the archaeologists beat their crews, The Naked Jungle 1954, Interrupted Melody 1955, where she was nominated for her third Oscar, The Absolutely Fabulous The Man with the Golden Arm 1955, Return to Peyton Place 1961, Madison Avenue 1961, The Sound of Music 1965, playing the role of the Baroness, See You in Hell, Darling 1966, The Tiger and the Pussycat 1967, and The Eye of the Cat 1969. Parker retired in 2003 and died in 2013. Kathy O'Donnell played the role of Susan Carmichael. O'Donnell lived in Alabama until she was 12, and the family moved to Oklahoma. That's going from hell to double hell. After college, O'Donnell earned enough money to travel to Hollywood. She quickly obtained a contract with MGM. They worked on her Southern accent by sending her to train at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. Her first credited role was in the epic The Best Years of Our Lives, 1946. Based on the strength of her performance, she was immediately given more roles. Her next 4 films were the film noirs Bury My Dead, 1947, The Amazing Mr. X, 1948, They Live by Night, 1948, and Side Street, 1950. At the age of 23, she married Robert Wyler, the brother of director William Wyler. Samuel Goldwyn objected and canceled O'Donnell's contract. She continued to make movies, and notable of these independents are Detective Story 1951, The Story of Mankind 1957, and the epic Ben-Hur 1959, which was her last movie. She continued in television for a few more years. Sadly, she died of cancer in 1970 at the age of 46. William Bendix played Detective Lou Brody and partner of Detective McCloud. Bendix was born in 1906 in New York City.
I'm walking here! I'm walking here!
He had an early acting role in a 1911 silent film when he was 5. Bendix dropped out of school when he was 15 and became a bat boy for the New York Giants and Yankees. He was supposed to be a favorite of Babe Ruth, who he later played in the movie. He later worked as a singing waiter and joined the Henry Street Players. Bendix got married in 1927 and went into the grocery business. The store failed during the Great Depression. He next joined the Federal Theater Project and worked in the Theater Guild. Bendix, who was built like a tank, was noticed by Hal Roach and given a studio contract. He had lots of film noir roles, comedy roles, and war roles. He was uncredited for a bit part in They Drive by Night 1940, The Glass Key 1942, Wake Island 1942, for which he received a Best Supporting Actor Oscar nomination, Guadalcanal Diary 1943, Lifeboat 1944, where his character was having his leg amputated without painkillers, The Blue Dahlia 1946, The Dark Corner 1946, The Babe Ruth Story 1948, where he played the Bambino, A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court 1949, Cover Up 1949, Johnny Holiday 1949, Streets of Laredo 1949, The Big Steal 1949, Kill the Umpire 1950, where he had double vision, Detective Story 1951, Submarine Command 1951, Battle Stations 1956, The Deep Six 1958, and The Young and the Brave 1963. He may be best known for the Life of Riley radio show 1944 to 51, the Life of Riley 1949 movie, and the Life of Riley television show 1953 to 1958. Bendix died at the early age of 58 in 1964. Story.
Let me explain. No, there is too much. Let me sum up.
Set in the 21st Police Precinct in New York City, Detective Dacus, Bert Fried is bringing in a young shoplifter, Lee Grant. Detective Gallagher, Frank Phelan, has to deal with a crazy lady. Thinks her foreign neighbors are making atomic bombs in their apartments. What year was this movie set in? A lawyer, Endicott Sims, Warner Anderson, comes in to see Lieutenant Monahan, Horace McMahon, about a client he represents, Carl Snyder, George McCready. Snyder wants to surrender, but he doesn't want to be handled by Detective Lieutenant McLeod, Kirk Douglas, because he doesn't want the rubber hose treatment.
It's okay. What about Snyder Counsel? Where is he?
He's ready to surrender himself to your personal custody.
My custody? He's McLeod's squeal. Each man handles his own case around here.
I don't want my client to have any contact with Detective McLeod.
Why?
Because I don't want any rubber hose used on him.
Counselor, how long have you been practicing law? We don't assault our prisoners.
McLeod comes in with a young caller. He's stopped outside by his wife, Mary McLeod, Eleanor Parker. They jump into a cab and are very happy to see each other. Mary is troubled because she can't get pregnant. McLeod goes back into the station. The man McLeod is arrested for theft is Arthur Kindred, Craig Hill.
What'd you do with the money, Arthur?
Spent it?
All of it?
Yes.
Turn them inside out. When were you at the Stork Club?
Wednesday night.
You really make the rounds, the hotspot kid. Where'd you spend last night?
In my room.
I was there. Where were you, under the bed?
I sat in the park.
All night?
Yes.
It rained.
So it rained. I didn't notice.
Sit down.
McLeod finds the girl's number, and when he calls, he gets the girl's sister, Susan Carmichael, Kathy O'Donnell. McLeod is called into the lieutenant's office to meet the lawyer. The lawyer has brought in photographs of the man that will surrender to show that there are no bruises. Snyder seems to be an abortion doctor, and the lawyer intimates that McLeod has a vendetta.
For over a year, McLeod, you personally have been making my client's life a living nightmare. Why?
Because I'm annoyed by criminals that get away with murder. They upset me.
That's your story.
Yeah.
I've investigated and discovered otherwise.
What are you driving at, Sims?
What?
Nothing yet.
I vouch for every man on my squad, and that goes for McLeod. If you got something to say, say it.
When it serves my purpose, not before.
McLeod's partner, Detective Lou Brody, William Bendix, is talking to Arthur but is rebuffed by the young thief. About this time, two bandits, Charlie Jiminy, Joseph Weissman, and Louis Abbott, Michael Strong, are brought in. In the play, they are a gay couple.
I got nothing to do with this. What do you think? I got rocks in my head?
Hey, quite a bundle. How much is here, Charlie?
$1,400.
11. Why is it every time we drag in one of you bums, you got $1,400 in your kick, I got 11 in mine?
You don't live right.
How'd you get this, Charlie?
I saved it. I worked.
Where?
I was a bricklayer, eh?
Counter, this goes to property clerk. We don't want Charlie suing us. He was a bricklayer. Let's see your hand. The only thing you ever laid was a $2 bet.
Immediately, the detectives separate the men to work them against each other. They use the good cop, bad cop. The shoplifter calls her brother-in-law, who is a lawyer, to come help her.
I'm at a police station. I took a bag from a counter in an apartment store. I had to admit it, Jack. It was on my arm.
Susan Carmichael comes in to find out about Arthur.
May I speak to Detective McLeod?
What's your name, please?
Susan Carmichael.
Come in, please. I'm Detective McLeod. Where's your sister?
Couldn't reach Joy. Where's Arthur? What happened to him?
How long have you known Arthur Kindred?
All my life. We lived next door to each other in Ann Arbor.
Kind of a wild boy, wasn't he?
Arthur, not at all. He was always very serious. Will you please tell me what this is about?
McLeod tells Susan that Arthur has been stealing. She is clearly in love with her sister's boyfriend. McLeod begins to leave for home when lawyer Sims brings in Dr. Snyder. McLeod begins grilling Dr. Snyder about the money he has in the bank. Sim talks to the lieutenant and says the doctor's assistant, Miss Hatch, Gladys George, plans on testifying against the doctor. They make a lineup and McLeod goes down to get Mrs. Hatch. She is wearing a new fur coat. She fails to identify the doctor that she worked for. McLeod blows up at the lady until the lieutenant makes him stop. A crime reporter, Joe Fenson, Louis Van Rooten, that hangs around the precinct, goes to talk to McLeod. McLeod says his father was a criminal and he drove his mother to the insane asylum. He sees his father in every criminal. Since the first ID failed, McLeod decides to take Dr. Snyder to Bellevue Hospital, where the latest victim of the doctor is in critical condition. McLeod is riding in the back of the paddy wagon with the doctor when the driver lets him know that the girl in the hospital has died. Sensing that Dr. Schneider is going to escape justice, he threatens to kill him.
I ought to fall on you like the sword of God.
That sword has two edges. You could cut your own throat.
I'm going to give you a piece of advice, Carl. When they let you free again, get out of New York. You put your one more patient in law or no law, I'll find you. I'll put a bullet in the back of your head and I'll drop your body in the East River. And I'll go home and I'll sleep sweetly.
The doctor threatens back. McLeod beats the doctor until he falls to the ground. When they get the damaged doctor back, he tells the lieutenant about McLeod's desire for revenge and a racketeer named Tammy Jacopetti, Gerald Moore, and a mystery woman before he passes out. The lieutenant tells McLeod to wait, and he sends to have Jacopetti picked up. Lawyer Sims comes into the office where the lieutenant and McLeod are waiting. The lawyer says McLeod has personal motives. They send McLeod out, and the lawyer says maybe the answer will come from McLeod's wife. After the lawyer leaves, the lieutenant asks McLeod what's the beef between him and Dr. Schneider. The lieutenant calls McLeod's wife. The other cops bring in the evidence to convict Charlie and Lewis. They start giving Charlie the business. Charlie says Lewis is a mastermind and a killer. When they find out that Charlie is wearing stolen clothes, they make him take them off. They borrow a pair of pants from the cleaning man, Willie, Burt Mustin. The lieutenant sends one of the detectives to keep Mary McLeod downstairs until he calls for her. Albert Pritchett, James Maloney, comes in about the money that Arthur stole from him. McLeod tells him that the money was not recovered and he is ready to press charges. Susan comes in with $120 and says she will pay all of the money back. She says she will sign a promissory note for the rest of the money. Arthur tells that he was spending extra money trying to keep dating Susan's sister. Detective Brody speaks for Arthur and his war service. The lieutenant sends McLeod on a wild goose chase looking for an old file. With McLeod out of the way, they bring in his wife, Mary. The lieutenant talks about the assault and then questions her on whether she knows Dr. Schneider. She says no, but it seems she does.
When'd you leave Highland Falls?
The spring of 1941. I got a job in a defense plant.
Where?
In Newark.
This doctor was practicing in Newark about that time.
Doctor?
Schneider.
Oh, he's a doctor?
Yeah. Never ran into him around Newark, maybe?
No, I don't know him.
Knows you.
What makes you think that?
He said so.
I'm afraid he's mistaken.
He was positive. Carl Schneider. Ring any bells?
No, I'm afraid not.
You looked away then. Why?
Did I? I wasn't conscious of it.
Are you sure a Dr. Schneider never treated you?
Certainly not. I just told you no.
Why are you so indignant? I didn't say what he treated you for.
He asks her if she has ever been pregnant. She is evasive and indignant. The lieutenant then asks if she knows Jacopetti. She says no, but is acting like a rat caught in a trash can. The lieutenant brings in Jacopetti, and Mary breaks down crying. McLeod comes back, and Detective Brody tells him that charges against Arthur are being dropped. McLeod says in that case he will charge him. The two bandits, Charlie and Lewis, are led away to be booked. McLeod tells Susan that he doesn't give criminals a second chance. Pritchard is talked back into pressing charges. Susan runs after him. The lieutenant tells Jacopetti that everything is off the record. Jacopetti says 7 years prior they were dating and Mary got pregnant. When she told Jacopetti, he had to confess that he was married. Mary got an abortion from Dr. Schneider. Later, Jacopetti beat the doctor senseless. The lieutenant tells Mary what he has learned, and she says McLeod never knew about her past life. The lieutenant calls McLeod into the room with Jacopetti and Mary. The lieutenant thinks McLeod is persecuting Dr. Schneider because of Mary. Mary tells McLeod the story, and he has no idea what had happened. Jacopetti and the lieutenant leave the room. McLeod calls her a tramp, and she begs for forgiveness.
Oh, Jim, I'm terribly sorry. Please forgive me.
My immaculate wife.
I never said I was.
You never said you were? Why didn't you tell me?
Oh, I wanted to. I was so afraid of losing you.
How long did you go with him?
A few months.
How many?
About 6 or 7.
7 isn't a few. I'd just as soon Schneider died. I'd rather go to jail for 20 years than find out my wife was a tramp.
Don't say that, Jim.
That's the word. I didn't invent it. That's what they call it.
He says she can't have a baby now because of the abortion. No second chances are given by McLeod. Mary can't take the attack and runs out crying. The lieutenant tells McLeod that Dr. Schneider is going to be okay. McLeod breaks down and cries. That evening, McLeod is rocking some hip tortoiseshell glasses. He is processing Arthur when Charlie and Lewis are brought back in. The shoplifter talks to Susan about finding a good man to marry. The shoplifter is taken away to court. Susan tells Arthur that she and he should be in love. Detective Brody begs McLeod to let Arthur off because he reminds him of his son that was killed in the war. McLeod gives no second chances. Mary comes into the station and tells McLeod that she is leaving. He suddenly starts begging her to stay. Finally, she agrees after he begs. McLeod goes out into the station and Lawyer Sims is there. They have words and McLeod is driven back to hate. He starts asking Mary how many other men there were. He can't get past the dirty pictures in his mind. Mary says she is leaving McLeod for good before she is driven insane like his mother. She says he is just like his father. He realizes it is true.
Drove her away, didn't you? Why? I tried to warn you, you fool. Why?
I don't know. Why do we do these things, Joe? Who knows? I built my whole life on hating my father. All the time he was inside me laughing. Maybe he was crying. Poor devil, maybe he couldn't help himself either.
Mary leaves and McLeod is in the station when someone runs in yelling that she has been robbed. While all of the attention is focused in that direction, Charlie grabs a gun from one of the detectives. McLeod starts walking towards Charlie until the bandit fires, hitting McLeod 3 times.
I was wondering when you'd get around to it, Charlie.
None of your guff.
Give me that gun.
The gut, you'll get it. One step, I'm warning you on!
Easy, Jim. He can't get by the disc. Jim, don't be a fool.
You dirty, sneaking
Suicide by convict. McLeod is dying. He asks for a priest. He asks him to let Arthur go. He asks for forgiveness from Mary. He begins the last rites and dies. Detective Brody finishes the prayer. Detective Brody releases Arthur and tells him not to make a monkey out of him.
All right, son. Go on home. Don't make a monkey out of me. If I see you up here again, I'll kick the guts out of you. Don't make a monkey out of me.
Don't worry, I won't.
You won't.
All right, go on, get out of here.
Susan and Arthur promise that they won't, and they leave. As McLeod lays dying on the station floor, Susan and Arthur walk across the street hand in hand. World-famous short summary. Like Elsa, let it go, let it go. I hope you enjoyed today's show. I really appreciate you spending the time listening. You can find connections to social media and email on the site at classicmovierev.com. There are links in the podcast show notes as well. If you want to help, jump over to Apple Podcast and give me a review. It really helps the show get found. Beware the Moors.